Okay, no worries.
Okay. So, good evening, everybody. Good to see you. This session is co-hosted by the Orthodox Interfaith Center and by the Middle East Center with Tom Wagner. Uh, Usually, we have a group of rabbis and imams. We have several groups, but that meet online every week. This specific group of rabbis and imams meet every 2 weeks. It's called the Curriculum for Peace. We actually explore uh, the early history of Judaism and Islam, 7th, 8th centuries in the Hijaz in the Middle East, led by Rebecca Abramson, who is from the Al Sadiqim Press. She has a tremendous amount of knowledge to share, and it's a true honor and privilege to have her with us. Uh, Usually, we meet only our group, 4 to 6 people, and study and go deeply. Because this session happens to deal with a Jewish Persian rabbi and his encounter with Prophet Muhammad, and because it falls in this time of the war, we figured that it would make sense to actually open it up for the public and also put it on YouTube. And we hope everybody will enjoy this learning. Listen carefully because Rebecca has a lot to share, and don't lose the thread. There's a lot of information. It's truly inspiring and fascinating. But before I hand it over to Rebecca, my colleague, Mr. Tom Wagner, if you opening remarks, and then we'll move to Rebecca.
Thank you. So I lead the Middle East Center in Israel, which is an initiative to foster dialogue, direct dialogue between Israelis and the Muslim world, and to understand better the Middle East from an Israeli perspective. This event is very exciting for me because last week we just had another event, a Zoom meeting with leaders and representatives from the Iranian opposition that were talking directly to the Israeli public. And today we go to the past to see the hidden friendship between the Jewish people and the Persian people. So without further ado, Ms. Abramson, please take us to this amazing journey.
Tom, can you just give Rebecca permission to share a screen? I think you own this online. So
yes, I'm trying to now. Actually, I always ask you how to do it, but now I'm I said, do you see religious federalism? Monotheists? Do you see my?
Tom needs to give you permission to share screen. Give him a second.
I think that.
Oh, okay.
I think I've done it.
I tried to share it. I hope I did it.
No, it's not yet.
But he has to do it.
He has to authorize it. Click here.
Click here.
Where's the share?
Where I know I don't see it.
I'm gonna make you co-host and I'm gonna resolve this issue.
Okay. There, I did.
No.
What do I do?
Make that big again. Yeah. Where's the share button?
Do this one? I already did the share button.
Okay.
So he should be working on it now. Well, I could just start talking and you'll see the.
Maybe you'll try it now because I changed the settings.
I just don't see the share button.
It's not on the screen.
It's not there, so forget that. I don't see the share button. Make this bigger. I don't see a share button. I already did it. I did the share button. I don't know where it is.
Is there anything Zoom on that side?
Okay. Maybe here.
No.
I don't know. Screen sharing meeting. I can't make it bigger.
Try right click, close it.
Close it. Close window.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
It means leave meeting.
Okay, click on it again.
Right click.
Right click.
Okay.
What does it say? Big.
Zoom workplace.
Yeah, try that. No, it's not that one.
Okay. Well, Rabbi Levi, do you have my?
Let me.
Maybe you can share it because I sent it to you. I sent it. I mean, it's there on the on our WhatsApp group on Scholars of Peace. Maybe you could bring it down.
Yeah. Let me open it. Give me a second. So I need you to stop sharing your screen.
But okay, I mean, get rid of that. Right. Okay. Maybe I'll just start talking, and if you can work on sharing it.
Here it is.
Here it is.
No,
We
no,
now
now we
we
see
can
it.
see
Now we
it
see it.
now. We can
I
see
mean,
it.
it's okay.
Yeah.
You can see it?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You're good to go. Good to go.
Right. They can see it. They're saying that they can see it.
Okay.
You can see it, so you should give that to me so I can do it.
Oh, there's the shirt.
Okay.
On the top.
Okay. So it's done. Good. Okay. So basically, what we're doing at the Al Sadiqan Institute, it's interfaith dialogue, but it's the study of it's historiography. It's the study of histories. We're not doing. It's not focused on theology. It's not focused on interfaith, like what's similar and all this stuff. It's really focused on the study of histories, which is historiography, in order to uncover clues why different Abrahamic faiths diverged at certain points in history. And many times religious people are hesitant to use history to study religion because it seems putting things in historical context can feel like, are we taking away the sacredness of it? And that's the furthest thing from the truth. Just because some use of historical study has sometimes been misused by some scholars, that doesn't mean that we should eschew it all together. So basically, I'm going to be talking about the involvement of what I'm trying to emphasize, especially with the war going on, is the involvement of Jews from pre-Islamic times, from before Muhammad to the rise of Islam, including the importance of Jewish judges in nascent Islam. So I start here. Basically, we have a situation where to speak very broadly, in the Jewish consciousness, it's sort of like this. The temple fell in 70 CE, and then the state of Israel was founded in 1948, right? How Jewish people are aware of all the attempts to rebuild the temple until the dawn of Islam. It's really not in the Jewish consciousness so much. And that's because although there were many attempts, and what I say here is until Islam attempts to rebuild or thwart the rebuilding of Solomon's temple, held sway in the Jewish consciousness, unlike today. Rabbinic pacifism existed, meaning we're going to pray and wait for the Mashiach, for the Messiah, to rebuild the temple. Political messianism dominated, and the rabbis could be swayed if such promises seemed to be materializing. With the rise of Islam, political messianism gave way to rabbinic pacifism. That's what dominated, and attempts of restoration in the past were censored from our collective consciousness. This past both rabbinic and political, with the Exilarch taking part in the suppression of restoration. First of all, does everyone know who the Exilarch was? The Exilarch was the leader in exile. It started with...
It's better explain.
Reish Galuta? You mean Reish Galuta?
Yes, Reish Galuta.
Thank you. Okay.
He was more of a political leader than a religious leader, and there was tension between the Reish Galuta Exilarch and the rabbis, because the Exilarch was leader of the whole Jewish people, including Karaites, including the non-religious, and they tended to be more political and less religious. And so despite the tension between both camps, up until Islam, after the dawn of Islam, all agreed to suppress attempts at restoration, because I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but what happened after Caliph Umar was that there were Jewish zealots who did a provocation on the Temple Mount in order to get the Muslims and Christians off the Temple Mount and have exclusive Jewish messianism. And because the Jewish factors, the Jewish leaders didn't feel they could control their zealots, they basically agreed to this pacifism, to this, we'll only have a temple if it's inclusive of all peoples. The temple was never meant to be exclusive to only Jews. Now, because this agreement was at the time of Caliph Umar, And because we all hold by Yeridat Hadorot, that is, an agreement like that is less important than our traditions or our scriptures, I ask at the bottom of this slide, is this agreement set in stone? When Jews say, we can't go to the Temple Mount, and when Muslims say, Jews can't go to the Temple Mount, that's really coming from a specific agreement for historical reasons that's not necessarily set in stone. Can we now work together towards a restoration that is inclusive and federalist and trump the exclusivity that has heretofore thwarted restoration? Now, were non-Jews part of the temple? Yes, there were. Non-Jewish temple arrived en masse for the Shavuot and Sukkot holidays, performing the festival or Hajj pilgrimage and sharing in the Korban Shlamim temple offering, okay? They were referred to Gerim, Canaanites, Nethinim, Shlamai, and Muslamai. So terms similar to the word Muslim were used hundreds of years before Muhammad, peace be upon him, to describe proper monotheists who were temple sympathizers. And again, the terms Shlamai and Muslamai were probably referring to the Korban Shlamim, which is the peace, or that is wholeness sacrifice. So I want to say, I mentioned inclusiveness. We had messianic exclusivity versus religious federalism. What is religious federalism? That is this parallel to what in Islam, as Tabari put it, al-din wahad, al-sharia mukhtalifa, which means there's one deen, which in Judaism is one Noahide, one overarching Noahide basic set of laws that apply to all humanity. And in Islam, that's called deen. But the Sharia is mukhtalifa. That means the different covenants vary with different nations. So we have to keep the same deen, the same Noahide basic laws. But the Sharia, there can be different covenants. There can be the covenant of the gospel, the covenant of the Torah, the covenant of the Quran. There were also called Sabaeans, who were non-affiliated monotheists. And there can be differences all under one roof. And this concept inspired Muhammad, alav shalom, to formulate the Constitution of Medina, which is the Salifat al-Medina. It inspired the Ottoman millet system. It inspired John Selden's vision for Europe and the founding principles of the United States of America. That is Abrahamic inclusivity, as opposed to the concept of if everything's tolerant and everyone's okay, if everyone's the same. Everyone has to be the same is the Pax Romana. If Roman citizens were all equal as long as they were all Roman, but they didn't have variety. The concept that everybody has to be the same in order to be acceptable is a Roman concept and not an Abrahamic concept. And that's the basic assumptions that underpin this lecture. So I want to get to Persian Jews. Are there any questions up until now? Any questions, any points, clarification? Okay. Persian Jews. From when did Jews reside in Persia? Since a little before the fall of the first temple in 586 BCE. Before that, the Jewish king Joachim was captured by Nebuchadnezzar II, and he became the
Sorry,
first
can I ask a question?
Political leader in exile.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
So, yes.
And apologies for not asking when you asked,
yes.
where you offered the floor. I just couldn't get my audio on. So apologies. So just, I mean, what you shared in the last slide is all new to me. And I don't, I'm not surprised by that, but I'm questioning whether this is known by, your average Jewish person, that, that there were so many different, so much connectivity between the non-Jewish world. I mean, we know they brought korbanos as well, but the level of connectivity you're describing is surprising to me. And where the name Muslim comes from, etc. Is this something that is well known in the Jewish world?
Well, I think that the Targum Onkelos is well known. That's sort of like Rashi. That's very important, and that the terms that he uses in his Targum, in his translation in Genesis and Numbers are read. This is not something marginal. Like if someone would say Rashi says or Onkelos says, that's pretty important. Whether everyone puts it together and says, wow, there were the seeds of an inclusive monotheistic federalism, I'm not sure if they're putting it like that, but I think that I would say that I think your average Orthodox Jew is aware of Noahism, is aware that we don't proselytize. And why doesn't rabbinic Judaism proselytize? And I say rabbinic because there were forms of Judaism that did. That is, the Sadduceans did proselytize. So today, if you would go to a Reform, Conservative, Reconstructionist, or Orthodox rabbi and say, do you proselytize? They would all say, of course not. If you would go to any of those rabbis and say they want to convert, they would first discourage them. And you say, why do you do that? Because it's okay to be not Jewish and still get to heaven and still be a good citizen, because what's important is the 7 laws of Noah. So I think that, yes, is in the Jewish consciousness. Whether to what extent is, this known, that there were non-Jewish participants, I don't know how much I know what you mean, like there's knowledge, but is it like, bubbling in the Jewish consciousness? And I don't know. That I'm not sure about.
Just to put it in context, Paul, and thank you for the question. I think
let's get to more. There's more that we need to cover here. So,
So just very quickly to give the context, I don't think Rebecca is arguing that everybody should have known that. It's obvious. No, it's not obvious. History took a certain turn. Now we're trying to actually reveal ideas that could be used to educate people in what we think could lead to a more peaceful and reconciliation. But that's just in a nutshell to give the context. It's an educational, active effort. It's not a passive claim. So I think that's the value. Okay, but yeah, let's move on. We have Persian Jews to discuss.
So we had these seeds of an inclusive monotheistic kingdom already in the ancient Hebrew Commonwealth, and that inspired John Selden and the Christian Hebraists to bring modern concepts of political science into modernity, because they noticed that as Christians were killing each other in Europe over theology in 1500s, 1600s, something had to stop it, but they needed an intellectual framework to do that. And they looked in the Bible and they saw that non-Jews, they also looked at the Talmud and Maimonides and saw that non-Jews were residing in this theocracy with full civil rights. And so it's well known enough that it made its way into modern political science. So Persian Jews, until the 3rd century CE, under the Parthian Hellenist influenced Parthian rulers, the Jews even had it so good they even achieved semi-autonomy. Keep in mind that the symbol of sort of the arch enemy of the Jews is the one who burned the temple, which is Rome, which became Byzantium. So under Roman Byzantium, there was a feeling that Esav Soni es Yaakov, that they will just always hate Jews. But here over in Persia, where they didn't have that history, they were doing really very well, and different streams of Jews flowed into Persia under the kings, like Joachim was there. From the Davidic house, there was an issue when the Hasmoneans, the Maccabees, rededicated the temple, and they also took the kingship. So there were people from the Davidic house that had a claim to the throne, and they migrated to Arabia, and also to what's now Arabia, and also to Persia, because they were claiming to their throne, and it was better that they escape and not have the jealousy of the Maccabees. Just before the Bar Kokhba revolt, there was some movement, Pharisaic movement to Persia. And then after the failed Bar Kokhba revolt, of course, there was masses that moved to what's now Arabia and to Persia. Now, starting in the 3rd century CE, the Sassanids, who were fire worshippers, started ruling Persia. And that increased with persecutions of the Abrahamic faiths. Christians and Jews were persecuted. The Sassanids were fire worshippers and really were not interested in Abrahamic religions. However, the Persian Jews had it so good under Persia for, we were talking almost 900 years, that they still joined in they would still join in the invasion of Jerusalem in 614 CE, and I want to get up to that. I'm talking about the immigration of Jews to what's called Arabia now, which I've already mentioned, and I think I'll leave Anais for another time. So mostly, though, in what's called Arabia now, Himyar and the Hijaz, the basic influence were the Herodian and Sadducean Jews. And they did hold by forced conversions, not just proselytizing, but forced conversions. They were more political. They denied tradition. When the Second Temple fell in 70 CE, the question is, where did the Sadducees go? The Sadducees had ruled the Second Temple. They didn't believe in the afterlife. They didn't believe in Tchias HaMesim. How do you say that? You say Tchias HaMesim? I'm sorry.
The resurrection
of the dead. They didn't believe in resurrection, and they didn't believe in the oral tradition. When the Second Temple fell, they didn't just disappear. Many had migrated to the Hijaz. And so some of what the Quran criticized when it comes to Judaism, and we say we don't recognize that at all, when they say that the Jews switched the places, the place in the Torah of Na'aseh v'nishma, which is we will do and we will hear, to we will hear and we will do. Well, we know that we didn't do that. We know that in our Torah it says Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will hear. But so it seems like Islam doesn't have a correct opinion of Judaism to make that accusation. But it turns out, and other sources also, other lines in the other verses in the Quran indicate that they're responding to a Sadducean forms of Judaism and not Pharisaic. Today's Jews are all descended from the Pharisaic rabbinic line. There aren't any Sadducean Jewish movements as such today. So again, right now, since Islam, it would have been difficult to say to Jewish people, let's rebuild your temple, because the promises of restoration were suppressed after the dawn of Islam because of an agreement between Jewish leaders and Islamic leaders. However, in several times in the 2nd century, 4th century CE, 5th century, 6th century CE, there were promises of restoration. Here's one example. The Byzantine Emperor Julian besieged a city in Persia and announced plans for the Jews to rebuild the temple to try to wean the Jewish people off their allegiance to Persia and have them have more allegiance to Byzantium. In spite of his promises, the Jewish community still sided with Persia. And then, the Roman forces then destroyed Jewish communities because of that, and they took refuge under the Exilarch. So so now we have the Sassanids are coming in the 300s. And again, I said before, they had no interest in the Abrahamic religions. However, there was a appreciation for the fact that most of the Jews, when they settled in Persia, and by the way, they brought from the land of Israel irrigation and agricultural techniques, they settled in the northwestern buffer zone between Rome and Persia. And so when there were conflicts between Rome and Persia, the Jews, who had really nowhere else to run, were defending their own area they were thus defending Persia. So Persia really owed a debt of gratitude to that, and they knew that. Even the Sassanids knew that. Yeah. Okay. So there was a time in the Sassanid history where they started to really try to wipe out the exilarchs, the Jews of here was that there was a blood libel against the Jews of Isfahan, and they were accused of something which made one half of the Jewish population be executed and their children kidnapped, basically. The exilarchs were furious at this and insisted on their right of autonomy and self-defense. And a Persian ruler tried to actually wipe out the exilarchate. So things were getting worse, and you can imagine that Jewish messianic hopes would start rising. There was another group that started to rise called the Mazdakites, which were the communists of their day. They believed in communal property and decreasing the differences between rich and poor. And they challenged the wealthy nobility of all, of the Jews, of the Christians, and the Zoroastrians. And it would lead to the crucifixion of the exilarch. I think I'm hearing my voice double, so it's kind of bothering me. Maybe someone should go on.
That there were non-Jewish.
Esther, you need to mute yourself, please. Thank you. Okay.
I just muted somebody. Is that okay? Okay. So now, despite this, okay, so King Kovad I embraced Mazdakitism, and it would, he crucified, I will get to the next. Okay, he led to crucifying Mar Zutra, 22 years old, and his father Mar Hanina on the bridge of Mahoza. And Salman Farsi, we're going to get up to him, would recall this in his biography, and that there was a charge against this exilarch that resulted in this crucifixion, the misuse of money, tax money for his personal use. So now, what was going to be the response to this crucifixion? Here was the dilemma. Was the Jewish people going to respond with politicalism or with pacifism? The exilarch Hunai, which was Mar Hanina's son or Mar Zutra's son, I'm not sure, Hunai, vowed revenge, but others started to go to pacifism, mysticism. Hushiel Hofnai was part of the exilarch family, and he turned to mysticism, to pacifism. Things were getting bad, let's become pacifists. He had two sons. One was Nehemiah, and the other Shalom, who we believe is Salman Farsi, whose destiny would be intertwined with the future Muhammad, peace be upon him. Basically, the upshot of all this is that the Jews under Persia, including the Rabbinites, Karaites, Sadducees, all the different kinds of Jews, had much freedom and even autonomy that was threatened with the rise of the Sassanids. Their position was precarious, but not ruined. And it was good enough, they had had such good memories of the place, and there was really nowhere else to turn, that upon the Persian invasion of Jerusalem in 614, the Persian leadership was still able to rally 20,000 Persian Jewish troops to conquer Jerusalem, having been gripped by messianic hopes due to their deteriorating position in Persia. So now we turn to Jerusalem. Any questions, clarifications up until now? Things are getting worse for the Persian Jews, but here's a chance for restoration.
Now, my question, Rebecca, how can we explain that they were rejected by society, but at the same time invited to be in the army? So, or was that just a way to get away from Persia, just to join the army on a voyage? And
wait, what? What's the question?
I'm asking, how can we understand that they were like rejected by society and at the same time invited to join the army? Or maybe the army was just a way to get away from
okay, okay, listen. There was a separation of Mar Zutra was 520 CE. The invasion of Jerusalem was almost a century later.
Oh, okay,
there was a bit of a break in time. It wasn't exactly at the same time. Okay, it's sort of like
as well.
we had it good, we have it bad. It's getting, now there was a promise of restoration. Okay, so it was rising on that hope.
I was wondering if I thought that crucifixion was a Roman method of execution, and you telling me that in Persia they used that too? That's
well, I guess they crucified these two exilarchs. Maybe they copied it from the Romans. I mean,
okay.
I don't know. That's what I understand. They were not just executed, but crucified.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So here's just a summary what we're going to talk about. The Persian and Jews united in the siege of Jerusalem, Persia in the name of greater conquest, and Jews in the name of messianic fervor because of promises by Persia for Jewish restoration. And that turned towards betrayal. Okay, eventually Persia would betray the Jews upon this invasion. And at that, okay, so I'll go to the next slide and then come back. In 591 CE, Byzantine Emperor Maurice, we're over in Byzantine now, and they're ruling Jerusalem and Egypt. He actually helped the Sassanid king Khosrow regain his throne from the Mazdakites. The Mazdakites were communists, rabble rousers. We don't want kings. No, no czar, nothing. Well, anyway, it didn't quite work. Maurice helped his this King Khosrow regain his throne. Well, why would he help him? Well, because the opposing king was more of a nuisance than a sworn enemy. They might have also claimed descendant from Alexander the Great. They might have seen themselves as distant cousins. Plus, it's possible that Khosrow's wife, Mariam, might have been Maurice's daughter. So they might have actually been, related through marriage. So thus they were allies and related. So after helping Khosrow get the throne, that showed that Maurice and Khosrow were allies. In 602 CE, a little after that, the Byzantine army in Thrace rebelled against Byzantine Emperor Maurice because he was ordering fights in this freezing cold winter and things like that, and they wanted to stop, and he didn't allow them to stop. And so Phocas, who was an army general, was whipped up by the troops, and he killed Maurice, killed Khosrow's ally. Okay, that's 602 CE, and Phocas became emperor. Think of Henry VII, who had no royal blood. Just because he kills Richard III, he can become king? Nonsense. He's an illegitimate king. And so Khosrow said, not only am I, as Khosrow, an inheritor of this kingdom which was divided, you Phocas are an illegitimate king. I'm taking Egypt. What's in the way between Persia and Egypt? Jerusalem. So what's a good way to get more support in invading, getting to Egypt? By going through the Holy Land, whipping up Jewish messianic hopes. Nowadays, if anyone would try that, it wouldn't work very well because this has been repressed for centuries since this agreement with Islam. But back then, it was on the tail of other attempts that had happened almost in every century since 70 CE. So the Jews joined the army. And who headed the army? Who did Khosrow II put as the head of the army? A pacifist, ultra-Orthodox Jew, basically, Nehemiah ben Hoshiel. Khosrow knew that he was a mystic. He was basically pacifistic. He was from an Exarch family who had knowledge, but he wouldn't be much of a threat. He could be under Khosrow's thumb. And so this way, he would have somebody who wasn't troublesome be the head of the army. This would inspire the Jews, whip them up to messianic fervor, and start an invasion of the Holy Land. So this was the Jews under Byzantium of Rome, which was a sworn enemy of the Jewish people. Byzantine Jews started rebelling. And this Khosrow set the Exarch up with a court in Edessa, Greece, and everything was going to plan. Persia would conquer Egypt. Then Persia would make peace with Phocas. You see, they take back his illegitimate kingdom, but then they'll make peace and everything will be fine. Then, unfortunately, well, the Persians were winning the Holy Land. They were in Egypt, and Heraclius II killed Phocas. That means that avenging Maurice's murder was no longer an issue. Heraclius killed Phocas. So there was not much of a reason for Khosrow to continue this war. And Jews had submitted to Khosrow in hopes of restoration. Khosrow used the Jews for military gain in exploiting hopes that he did not share. And the exilarch Nehemiah was made ruler of Jerusalem. Okay. And then what happened? A Christian mob killed Nehemiah ben Hushiel. The Christians weren't going to sit back and have all the Jews rebel against all the provinces up through European areas. You know, they weren't going to sit back. So they killed Nehemiah ben Hushiel. And then, who was considered a Persian, who was also Jewish, of course. He was the exilarch. And then Persian troops sacked Jerusalem. Khosrow did not intend this. Khosrow wanted to rule Jerusalem, rule Egypt, and then make peace and finish this. He didn't intend all of this bloodshed. This enraged Heraclius, the sacking of Jerusalem, and all of Byzantium. Okay, now who sacked Jerusalem? The Persians. Did the Jews participate in that? Was it Persians? Was it both of them? Well, what happened was Khosrow commanded that the Jews be driven from the city. It's like he blamed the Jews for this, okay? The ones that he whipped up into a messianic fervor, the ones that he incited to come and get to the Holy Land, and the Jews thought that could be a step towards restoration. He said, get out of Jerusalem, either be killed or sold into slavery. One of the people that was sold into slavery was Nehemiah's brother, Shalom ben Hushiel, Salman Farsi. And in terms of who was killed by the Eastern Gate, we have a tradition that there's a huge area where thousands of soldiers are killed. That's where they were killed because they refused to leave Jerusalem. And so they were killed by the Eastern Gate. So the Jews and the Persians had fought together. Then the Persians fell upon the Jews, killed them, sold them as slaves, including Shalom ben Hushiel, who was taken to Medina. And in Arabia, this year was called the Year of Sorrow. It was during these events that the Prophet Muhammad had his night journey, flying from Mecca to Jerusalem on a winged animal. So that's an interesting coincidence, or maybe it's not a coincidence. So imagine the Jews are rebelling against Byzantium, who sworn enemy anyway. They think they're being helped by Persia, and then the troops are slaughtered or sold into slavery. They have nowhere to go. Where are they going to go? According to the book of Daniel, he had prophesied that there would be 70 weeks of years until the temple would be rebuilt. 490 is 70 times 7. Oh, let me get to that slide. 490 years had passed from the destruction, from Bar Kokhba's revolt. And so we were in 620, 622 CE. People were looking for, as it says in Daniel 1:1, Ish Hamudot. They really had nowhere to go but south, because in what's called Arabia now, in the Hijaz and Himyar, there had been Jewish groups that had moved there, bringing Judaism in different forms of in different forms, in the zealous form, that's the Bar Kokhba people, the Sadducean form, and the Davidic house. And so they were looking for signs of the coming of the prophet, and they were going to look for, I have it here, they needed an Eliyahu. Okay, because Nehemiah ben Hushiel was killed, he couldn't be the Mashiach, so the hope was he was the Mashiach ben Yosef. They needed to look for Eliyahu, and many people thought that that was Ish Hamudot, that could be a preacher in Himyar named Muhammad. what was he preaching? Well, he was stressing resurrection from the dead, which is a rabbinic teaching. He was stressing monotheist federalism, which is the Jewish Christians to be in any monotheist an acceptable citizen and have an afterlife. And it says he received a vision of concerning the souls of those slaughtered at the Golden Gate. And it could be that these souls of the garden, we have Gan, Jinn, accepted his message, and that could be what the Quran refers to in 46:29. So now that's all, like visions and things like that. But here in real life, in the world here, in 621, he met with refugees, and they pledged their allegiance in what's called the first pledge of Aqaba. It shouldn't be Al, just Aqaba. And in terms of Sabios, that was being united in faith. Now, a Greek historian named Sabios said that Muhammad said that he will retake Jerusalem for the children of Abraham, away from the Romans. And this is what Sabios, this Greek historian, said. He wrote to Heraclius. A little later, I have a slide where Heraclius responds to Muhammad, alav shalom, and says, go have your religion. You're just like another tribe over in the Hijaz. You have your religion, I'll have mine. But the fact that Muhammad made a statement of who Jerusalem belongs to, that it belongs to the children of Abraham, already made it have a wider view, a more global reach, and not just another tribe in Hijaz. Okay, so the uniting in faith. I'm just going to ask my husband a question. Binyamin, the uniting in faith, that's the Salifat al-Medina? Okay, sorry. Okay, so the uniting in faith, this is the Salifat al-Medina, which is the Constitution of Medina. And and here's how it's written in these terms. We will not worship any but the one God. We will not steal or commit adultery or kill our children. We will not slander. We will not disobey the prophet in anything that is right, and some food laws and stuff like that. So this is the Salifat al-Medina. This was a pact. This was an agreement. Okay? What happened? Well, there was some rabbinic Judaism there's something in the Quran where like people are fasting, and then Muhammad comes along another Jewish tribe and says, oh no, they're not fasting, I'm sorry. He comes along a Jewish tribe and says, what's happening? They say this is Yom Kippur according to the rabbinic calendar, and he orders people to fast. Like that, like putting in historical context, it's not that he didn't know what was going on. It's just that the majority influence in that area was Sadducean, and then when he came upon rabbinic influence, he accepted it. And why? Because it's rabbinic Jews, like I said before, whether we're Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, Reconstructionist, we don't proselytize. Other non-Jews can go to heaven if they keep the Noahide laws. That's what rabbinic Judaism held by, in opposition to Sadducean Judaism. So he was in agreement with rabbinic Judaism. Okay, any questions? Here in the Salifat al-Medina, the Jews will maintain their own religion, the Muslims theirs. And this was, like I said before, with the non-Jewish temple sympathizers. These were another kernel of an inclusive monotheist federalism. Okay, questions, comments? Okay, so it says that Shalom heard of the prophet's fame as he was picking dates for his slave master in the outskirts of the city. By the way, it does say that Salman Farsi helped transmit Ahadith traditions to show their authenticity. And when I say ally, I mean companion. He was one of the companions. And that shouldn't surprise us, because we know that there were Jewish judges who served in early Islam from the yeshivas of Persia, until the Muslims could, make their own judges. There were Jewish judges that helped them adjudicate, and that shouldn't be a problem because they have Deen, we have Noahidism, and it overlaps. So here's a map of him here. So I get to the Battle of the Trench. In 627 CE, Shalman ben Hushia was freed by Muhammad from slavery, and he was knowledgeable in war. He did, although they were a pacifist family, he did grow up in an Exarch family, and he was pretty knowledgeable. And he suggested to build trenches around the city of Kandak. Is that a city, sweetheart? Sorry. What? Around Medina. I'm sorry. Kandak means trench. It's not a city. The Kandak is the trench, and that was building the trenches around Medina, which was Shalman Farsi's help to Muhammad. Okay, this Persian Jew, a son of an Exarch, is the one who thought up, who brought the knowledge of building trenches, which was without precedent. And so, because they had got into this agreement, which I spoke about before, the Salifat al-Medina, where we will have our different religions, they had made this pact with the people of Medina. And so when the people of Medina rebelled against Muhammad, basically that was treason, and they violated that agreement. And so they had, the B'nai Qurayza had entered this treaty, and they reneged upon this. Was because this was treason. It was asked who, and a chief invoked the Torah itself to say that the penalty for treason is execution. So the males members of the Qurayza were executed, and their women and children taken prisoner. However, things get better. Okay, here we have Salman Farsi. I want to skip ahead to the Khaybar, and then I'll go back to this other historical document. Khaybar in 629, the Kohanim of Khaybar, it was a Jewish group of Sadduceans, there was a battle of Khaybar, and Muhammad sent a letter to them via Ali and Shalom Farsi, calling them to submit to him and reminding them of what their own scriptures said about his coming. He came to Khaybar and he conquered it. As far as the Muslims are concerned, this is the prototype of Muslims turning Jews into dhimmi. But the rabbinic Jews have no record of this. I remember being in a discussion at that the Root Center, where a Muslim sheikh said, "I'm always surprised that you Jews don't have any collective memory of Khaybar." And I just said, because the Jews there were Sadducean Jews. They were a different group. We don't descend from Sadducean Jews. So the Salman Farsi and Caliph Ali were friendly. I mean, Caliph Ali was friendly to Jews. And basically this is where the Battle of Khaybar, if we look at it historically, would be Muslims putting down militant, exclusivist, Sadducean-based Judaism, who was not expressing and not accepting the Noahism, as they denied any value in any other monotheistic faiths. So when Muhammad demanded submission, he wasn't saying you all have to be Muslims and fast on Ramadan and stuff and eat camel, because Jews don't eat camel. He was saying you have to submit to Noahism. That's the claim. That's my husband's claim. That's the claim. He wasn't turning all the Jews into Muslims. He was reminding them of Noahism in opposition to the Sadducean variety. And we
were rooting for Salman Farsi, who
because
was Muhammad against him.
And Ali and Shalom, it didn't turn into, it was a conquest, and it had nothing to do with treason. So they could stay in Khaybar. They just had to, they had some conditions they had to submit. And unlike the Banu Qurayza, the men of Khaybar were not executed, and the women and children were not made slaves. This was due to the mediation of Ali and Shalom. This was conquest, not treason. So
the Jews were rooting for
and rabbinic Jews would be on that side because they believed in the inclusive monotheism. So Muhammad
Rabbi,
was
can you explain again who was Banu al-Nadir?
Can
you explain again who was Banu al-Nadir? Who was the person?
Who was Banu Qurayza?
No, Banu al-Nadir. You had a slide there.
Banu Nadir, they had come into Khaybar, and the Nadir had come
executed.
When the Qurayza were executed, there was some Nadir there. They came to Khaybar and pitted the residents there against Muhammad. But I also wanted to say that we have in our rabbinic literature, in the Igerot Rabbi Shreya Gaon, there is a recording of the head of the yeshiva of Perosh Shavur and rabbinic students in Babylon he and, all right, as the son of an exilarch, Hushiel, Shalom, and Ali, who was Muhammad's son-in-law, were honored by the head of the yeshiva of Perosh Shavur in Babylon. That means, in allying with Muhammad, Shalom and Ali were not acting in an anti-Jewish way. And I refer you to the Igerot Rabbi Shreya Gaon.
80,000 yeshiva students went out to meet Ali.
80,000?
Yeah.
How can that be?
That's what that is.
80,000, that's more than a town.
Yeah.
Okay, so this was 30 years later. So I refer you to the Igerot of Shreya Gaon for the support that rabbinic Judaism was in an alliance with, or that Shalom as a rabbinic Jew was in alliance with Muhammad. Now it's almost 10 o'clock. So let me try to finish up. Any questions, anything? I mean, if we look at it like making people submit to an Abrahamic, Noahide monotheism, that's fine with all of us. Okay. Muhammad united him. He was building an Ummah Wahida, which we believe in also. And the horizons of Islam began to grow. And I want to get where, yeah, here we go. The Byzantine army was in the Transjordan. The Muslims fell upon them, and Muhammad dispatched a message. According to Sabios, this is what he wrote: God gave that country as an inherited property of Abraham and of his sons after him. We are the sons of Abraham. It is too much that you hold our country. Leave in peace. He's talking about the Holy Land. So the emperor just said, you're a tribal, go have your religion in Arabia, in the Hijaz, leave us alone. You go to your country. Just before he fatally fell sick, Muhammad had given orders for an expedition to Israel. This meant that the horizons of Islam were widening. This was a monotheistic religion for the whole world, which believed in an inclusive federalist monotheism. And that's what we have to raise that awareness, and it's not that difficult to do. And
Salman Farsi conquered Persia for Islam.
And he influenced Persia for Islam also. Salman Farsi also went to Persia. So there was this alliance, and we need to okay. And so just to wrap up the concept of how come we're not always trying to restore the temple since Islam, that was an agreement from both sides. We both agreed to it. Jewish, after Caliph Umar, who carried on the call of Muhammad, conquered Jerusalem, taking part in cleaning the Temple Mount, which had been left in filth by the Byzantines. However, and I can talk about this at another time, Jewish extremists who held by exclusive messianism they had their reasons, they had their ta'anot, they felt that the Christians were pushing them out. So they did a provocation against the Christians to rid the Temple Mount of the Christians. And the Jewish leaders felt that they can't control their extremists. They were in disarray themselves, and an agreement was entered into that we will not agree to any restoration unless it's inclusive monotheist. And that's why when we say we can't go to the Temple Mount and Muslims say Jews can't go to the Temple Mount, if we put it in context, then we will understand it better, and maybe we can even reinterpret it for the better. And that's basically it.
Well, thank you so much, Rebecca. It's a lot to take in, a lot. We can send the slides if you want them, but I think it's really looking at the context and how the conflict originated could potentially help us re-educate ourselves, educate our allies, and hopefully find a path forward. Tom, do you have any closing remarks you maybe want to say, or if anyone else? We have 2 minutes for like maybe one question.
Really, and of course the recording will be available at YouTube. We'll send you the link so you can share it or get back to it to get some more depth in it. Thank every one of you, and I wish all of us a quiet night. I think it's something that we deserve of.
Hope so.
Okay, great. Rebecca, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Definitely.
We'll continue learning together. Okay.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Any other
Good night,
questions?
everybody.
If there's a last question, we can take it.
Yes, sure.
Who had the question?
I don't think that someone had, but if someone has, then it's a good.
I see.
Okay.
Okay, I have to run to another meeting. Thank you, Rebecca. I'll see you in 2 weeks, and we'll continue exploring this together.
Thank you so much.